Get a Job in Tech, episode 268. Today, I met an individual who is taking up a master's degree in computer science, essentially, right? Now, we're just talking a little bit, and they're obviously looking for a JOB job, and definitely with that credentials, definitely they're able to get a job. So this particular episode is just going to be about me giving suggestions on what I see based on the LinkedIn profile. Okay, here we go. So for instance, the skills are good. Programming, IT system development, linear progression, unsupervised learning, IBM Watson, automation, software development, problem solving, etc. Python, EAI, which is enterprise application integration. The C++, good. Critical thinking, very positive. CSS, so yeah, basically websites. Augmented reality, and a lot of good stuff there. So now obviously this individual is just maybe looking for a job. I'm not exactly sure, but convey to me that yes, they want a job. And who doesn't want a job? They have a job, but they'd like a job in the IT sector. So I would say this. The first thing to do is, obviously they're already looking, I think, the individual told me, plan out, there's 168 hours in a week. Plan out almost like you do when you're a computer science, you're a programmer, essentially, where you're head down doing your coding and you block it time, say 4 hours, right? So take that into consideration, 4-hour block times, 3 days a week. Maybe it can be a Saturday or a Sunday. If you have that capability to do that, not everybody has that, but in 3-hour segments, do that. And what you're looking to do is this. You're targeting in your skills, you put those in your resume and you send it out. Of course, I haven't seen this individual's resume yet, but neither here nor there. And then I don't know if this individual has a GitHub, but I highly recommend they start a GitHub and then start to put in the code. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be very simple. C++, it could be a simple project and a calculator. It could be calculating area of square footage. It could be anything like that. Any commits, anything in their GitHub that presents it as if they're coding towards, they're familiar with how to code in different programs like Python, C++, Java, things like that. So everybody still uses C++, no matter what you hear. That's still the foundation. That's still a basis on every coding platform ever. Well, in existence today, from what I know anyway. My limited knowledge in it, but nevertheless, I do know that to be the case. And so everything starts there. Now, from C++, you can learn these other programming languages, essentially. And so I already mentioned GitHub. I already mentioned having a GitHub site, definitely, and have a website as well, laying out your projects. Now, for this particular role, you want to go on interviews with companies not in the location you want to be in. If, let's say, you pinpointed where you want to live, and you apply for jobs in different states or cities that you don't live in. The reason you do that is you want to get some reps in, if you will. You want practice, essentially. And you also want to know, what are they looking for? What type of job or what kind of skill set they're looking for? Let's say, for instance, you go and you apply for a job in Tacoma, Washington, for whatever, and it's in your field. It's a programmer. Maybe it's a Python programmer, let's say. So you go there and you go through the interview, et cetera, and you can write down notes on what they asked the questions on. Maybe there's certain algorithms they asked about. Maybe there's certain structures they asked about. Whatever it is that they were, whatever skills they were looking for that you don't meet, note those down. And it's based on the questions they're going to ask you. So put that on your list, put it to the side. Okay, now the next time you go in an interview, have a little more knowledge about those skills that you were asked of your previous interview. So now you have a, let's call it 1. So you went to interview, you didn't know what they're asking for, that's 1. Now you go on your second interview, let's call that 2, because you're building on 1. 1 plus the knowledge you have equals 2. Okay. And then so on and so forth until you're up to 10 or whatever it is, whatever the number is. So each time you go in an interview with the knowledge that you now have, 2 things happen. 1, you're going to know you're going to know what the questions are. Second thing is your confidence is going to grow. I would say probably 40% of it is confidence, actually, because not knowing what to expect is unsure. And are you talking enough? Are you not talking enough? Are you pausing too long? Do you need to mirror the conversation? You're unsure. And when you're unsure, you become nervous. And if you're nervous, then it comes across in the video, maybe they do a Skype or a Zoom call, or it's over the phone conversation. And you're not certain. But the more you go on these, the more prepared you are for the next interview. And I would say after, say, 10 interviews for companies that you may not even get the job, but you're just applying anyway, and you're trying to get your reps in, you're going to have a foundation. Now, after your 10th interview, you haven't got the job, let's say. Now start to educate yourself on those skills more in depth, and then create a GitHub post about it. Maybe it's something that they ask about an algorithm. Well, research that and then present that in your GitHub, so that when you go for the interview, the 11th interview, you're going to have, oh, it's in my GitHub, or I have it there. The other thing, so that takes care of the GitHub ID, or the GitHub process, because you got to figure, if you take your hands and you put them maybe a foot apart, let's say, that's your competition. So how do you decrease the amount of competition you have? Within the competition, let's say, in the city you're in or in the state you're in, that's your competition. How many of those individuals have a GitHub? Not sure, but you may or may not find that out. Okay, you're going to lower that competition because maybe most of them don't have a GitHub, especially if they're out of college. Maybe they haven't worked in the industry yet, so they don't know, they're not unsure, so they don't have a GitHub site. So that's a benefit for you. Now, the other thing is your competition isn't doing these things I'm talking about. Your competition isn't going to be going to interviews multiple times because they're going to take the first job or second job that they're offered, most likely, and they're only going to apply like 5 or 10 times max. That's it, until they get their first job, or they'll just take a second job or something relative to what the field they're in, but they won't take the job that they want because they're unsure, because they haven't gone on interviews, and what it comes down to is they haven't been told no. They haven't been challenged, essentially, as much. And dare I say, their ego has been bruised, if you will. So for instance, if you're someone who's you go to college and you're used to getting the best grades ever, okay? The best grades ever. And then you go into the field. Now you're a worker bee, you're a worker. And Now you're unsure. There's people outperforming you, and it can kind of damage your ego a little bit, especially if you're used to such stringent criteria, such stringent expectations of getting the best grade, et cetera, et cetera. So when you get into a job, if you don't have that, that mental toughness to accept that, and it doesn't matter, because your goal isn't necessarily, your goal is not to be the best at the company. Your goal is to fit in. Your goal is just to be the cog in the wheel. No one's expecting you to know everything. Doesn't happen. Not even possible. No way possible. And so that can be a little overwhelming when you first get in your job because you're unsure what you just do. The thing to do, let's fast forward and pretend you have a job, okay? And you have this job that you want. Now you want to keep it. So how do you keep your job? When you go for the interview face-to-face, here's what you do. You bring a notebook with you and you have some predefined, maybe 10 questions you want to ask the employer before you even go there. And then a salary range that you're looking to get paid in. Written down, clearly right there, written down. And when you're going through the face-to-face interview process, you can reference those. Sometimes what happens is when you interview, you want to look away. The tells are maybe they can read body language. So if you're not constantly eye contact or you're looking away when they ask a question, they may interpret that as not a correct answer, whatever it is. You can kind of consider that. By looking at your piece of paper, you're thinking more. They ask you a question, you look down, maybe you have some notes written down on what they may ask. Again, you've been through many interviews, so you kind of have an idea. And then you pause a little bit, and then you answer the question. You look down, you read it, you answer the question. And it's a not a tool, it's a prop, essentially. It's a prop that you're using to help you out. It's a prop you're using to help yourself out. Now, let's fast forward when you get the job, but you still have what they call imposter syndrome. You're not really sure if you don't know. And this is very, very common in IT, very common, because you just see all this technology is like, wow, so fast. You give yourself enough time, you'll know it too. And you have a notebook with you, and you're going throughout your day. And what you want to do is you want to try to remember the people you contact with. Try to remember their names. Write them down if you have to. Write down the names of the people you meet. People love to hear their name. If anything, you don't talk to them, but you know their name and you let them speak, they're going to say, wow, this person is such a great worker, even though you maybe didn't talk. You want to establish yourself that way. Okay, so you have this notebook with you. You write down their names. You write down maybe some things that the individual is asking you. Your manager, right? Essentially, your manager. They're asking you, these are the things we do every day. And you want to try to be as meticulous as possible, meaning you write down what time do we usually come in. If it's 9:30, what time our first meeting. Try to lay out your weekly routines. That's what you want to do. Lay out your weekly routines of what typically is expected of you. And then ask the question, what are my expectations? What do you expect of me? What do you expect me to do? Don't say that. What am I working here? What's the reason you hired me, essentially? What can I do to make your job easier? What are my expectations here? And essentially what you're telling is the individual, the boss, is, I want to help you make your job easier. How do I do that? What's my role here? And then write it out. Clearly ask them, what is it? Write it out. And because you want to know, you want to be really, really, really sure of why you're working there. Because you don't want, what happens is, if you don't know this information and you're unsure and you're nervous and you're have imposter syndrome, you don't know, et cetera, you when you're in a meeting and they don't call on you and they don't ask you your feedback, after a while, you could feel a certain way about that. Maybe they'll include you in their little discussions or some projects. It could hurt it could kill your confidence a bit. And this is why you ask the question of, what are my expectations? Because you'll know, well, that's not my role. For instance, let's say, for instance, you're working as a programmer. Now, your skill set is in Python versus maybe there's another project that is in Ruby on Rails, right? Well, even though you may know Ruby on Rails, your expectation is that you're doing the Python project. So that's not your lane. And the other thing is, when you're in meetings, now obviously you work there. When you're in meetings, you don't have to know everything. And it's okay to say, I don't know. I'll try to find out. And the other thing is, I've seen this with some individuals. When you have it on your profile, for instance, you have a company email and it has all these certifications that you have, like MCSE and CCNA and CCNP and Security Plus, CISSP, all these other things. Don't put those on your signature block for email for your company. It's just too many. It's just way too many. Because people, they're not going to know. No one can know all that stuff all the time. The only one I would say is to put on is the CCIE, Cisco Certified Internet Network Expert, and a CISSP. I would say those two, because they're very, very much that is a highly respected certification out there. If you have a degree, don't put that on your email, LinkedIn, not your LinkedIn, but your email signature. When you email people, don't put that. Put the company's name and then the phone number at the bottom, and don't put your phone number ever. Always put the company's phone number, because you don't want them calling you. Okay, I know you may think it's fine. Oh, I don't mind getting called. You don't. You really don't want to get called, because they could start calling you on a Saturday or Sunday when you don't want to be called. And obviously it's not your role as well. And the management is the one who calls. They should be the one to be called if there's an issue. And then they'll call you. That's how it should work. When there's more than 10 employees out there in a company, the manager works for you. That's how it works. Now, if there's less than 10 employees, then you work for the manager. That's usually how it works. But just getting the job, that's what you want to do. Just get the job. And when you have the job, you're there to work. You're not there to be friends and lifelong friendships. You're there to work, period. Plain and simple. Done. If you get your first job and it's not to your money expectations, but you take it anyway, let's say, for instance, your first job is $40K a year. Let's say $40,000. It's low, but let's say it is. And you want $80,000. That's what you want. So you're there to learn, and you're there to move. You're there to get enough knowledge to where you can move on. And that means just absorbing all the knowledge you can, updating your LinkedIn. You could put even a blank name, like a don't have to put the company's name. You could put a generic name, whatever it is, and then just keep applying. Keep applying at that job that makes you $80K a year. And then when you're at the money that you want, then settle down, settle in, and continue the process. It's a rhythm. It's always about a pattern. You want to get into a pattern. when you're in a pattern, you're able to accept changes easier. When you're in a work pattern, same thing. Work pattern. You come in daily, you do this 9 to 5, let's say, you're working. Now you're in a rhythm, you're in a pattern. Your weekly meetings are the same. You're in a pattern. You're in a pattern. Now everything else is just secondary, and everything else is easier to adapt to because you know they have this pattern, this work pattern. Every 2 weeks you get paid like clockwork. Look at that. And you're fine, you're happy, your skills are going great, you're learning. And then the thing to write down is the amount of days. So let's say 1,000 days. That's roughly 3 years. Block it out in a 3-year, or even have a yearly notebook, or not a notebook, but a planner. Everybody should have a planner, in my opinion. Have a planner out and then plan for the next 3 months. Literally write down in your planner the meetings you're going to have for work. Every single, plan it out for the 3 months. That way, when you need something, maybe you need to do a dentist appointment, you have a dentist appointment, whatever it is. You look at that calendar and say, okay, yep, I can do it this time. And you take the planner with you everywhere. And it gets it out of your brain. You don't have to think about it. It's in a planner. You don't have to think about it. So these are things to just approaches, really. It's all approach. It's going to take some time. It could be tomorrow you get a job. It could be next week. It's up to you, really. And it's also just about on one hand, it's the amount of volume you do, meaning the amount of interviews you go on. That's on one hand. On the second hand, it's just going to happen. If you think about it all the time, it's in your brain. The universe will bring it to you, essentially, because that's what you want to do. It's the affirmation. So you're thinking about it. It's always in your mind. It's always in your mind. And so the universe is going to bring it to you 100%. Now, definitely there are some caveats to this. It's almost like you have the goal on the left and then you on the right. Okay. So if you move, then the goal moves. If you don't move, the goal doesn't move. That's how it works. Pretty much in anything for that matter. These are just some things to think about when your career. I wish you luck, really. I wish you luck. I'd love to hear more about your story and how you are coming along in your career. And I hope to hear good news. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next one.